Hannah Gutierrez-Reed also remains charged with involuntary manslaughter. And the case against her is weaker than it was against Alec Baldwin, because he's the guy that had the gun in his hand when it fired. He was the last chain in the causes leading up to this. If everyone else had done everything wrong, but he'd only checked the gun, there would have been no death in this case. So I think no one bears more responsibility than Alec Baldwin. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's responsibility is more tentative, because it's not clear to me how proximate her loading of the gun, or did she load the gun, or, I mean, there's lots of kind of vague hand-waving stuff here, like there shouldn't have been live rounds on the set. That's certainly true. Did she know there were live rounds on the set? I don't know. It's a harder argument. Now, it's certainly, there's a legal basis for it, for sure. I mean, I could make the argument she's responsible for voluntary manslaughter in this case, given her job responsibilities, and I probably would. I have very little tolerance for people who cause others injury unintentionally using firearms. So I don't have any particular bad feelings for Gutierrez-Reed continuing to be charged with involuntary manslaughter. I think if nothing else, every other armorer working in Hollywood maybe will make sure to take every possible step to avoid this from happening to another actor. But in terms of the legal merits, of course, if you had a genuinely unbiased, apolitical, just making solid judgment calls on the legal merit, this would have been a prosecution of Alec Baldwin all the way to a jury, and that jury, again, if assuming it was being unbiased and impartial, and just applying the law to the evidence, would have really had no choice but to return a verdict of guilty, which would have been a maximum under New Mexico law of 18 months in prison, and not necessarily that. The sentencing would have been completely discretionary. So that even if convicted, the trial judge, the sentencing judge, could easily have simply had Alec Baldwin serve no time at all, which wouldn't have surprised me either, especially if Baldwin had offered to make some kind of accommodation, like community service, give gun safety lectures. Listen to me, boys and girls. No one knows better than me how dangerous guns are, because I had a terrible, terrible accident when I was holding a gun and shot and killed a dear friend of mine. That's the kind of arrangement I would expect. So the truth is, folks, I don't have a whole ton to say about this because, well, what can you say? It's just the kind of application of prosecutorial discretion that we see all the time. And let's see. In a politically motivated direction. And it looks like many of you don't have much to say about it either. I don't see any. Let's see. Let me go to Rumble. And frankly, I'm not going to redo all the detailed legal analysis here. Again, you can go to lawselfdefense.com/Baldwin, and all my legal analysis on this event is there, with the statutes, with the case law, all that stuff. So that's what I would encourage you to go to if you care about the details. It's all kind of moot now, of course. Now, it was reported that the charges were dismissed without prejudice, which means in theory they could be brought again, and that the investigation is continuing. I would be surprised. I guess one possibility is in the course of prosecuting Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and continuing that investigation and discovery and analysis and forensics, they feel that they may come across additional evidence consistent with Baldwin's liability, criminal liability in terms of manslaughter, and therefore they're reserving the right to bring the charges again. But I doubt it. I mean, they have everything they need right now if they wanted to pursue involuntary manslaughter charges. So I would not expect those charges to be brought back. And frankly, there's not much to talk about. So this isn't really a news report that's useful for as content for a full hour or hour-long program. But the news is breaking now, so I wanted to get to it now. Let me take a look and see if there's any questions in The Law Self-Defense member chat. Law Self-Defense member Dan says, have private security so you're hard to kill. Be a leftist celebrity so no DA will touch you. Yeah, it certainly looks that way. Law Self-Defense member Mike says, Mr. Branca, just a crazy hunch. Do you think they dismissed without prejudice to eliminate the charge hanging over his head, thus allowing him to handle firearms enough to finish the filming? They can then reinstate later after the film has wrapped. It's a lot of mind reading to me. Filming unrest resumes this week. Yeah, I'd heard that. You think they're going to be careful with the guns this time? Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to be on that set. Let me see the normal chat if there's anything. Yeah, and within minutes of this dropping of the charges being announced, the good Baldwin, my good friend Adam Baldwin, had texted me to share the news. I'd already seen it, of course, but you may know that Adam was Adam Baldwin from Firefly, from The Last Ship, from Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, from Full Metal Jacket. He had done an interview for me on my show a couple months back to talk about his experience as an actor in Hollywood, gun safety, and all that stuff. So, yeah, neither one of us are really surprised that the charge has been dropped. Let's see. Yeah, don't be pointing guns at people, folks. And by the way, it's worth noting that if Alec Baldwin, the moment this had happened, had said, "Oh my God, I didn't even know this was a real gun. I thought I was literally handling a prop." If he had made that statement, he would have had no liability at all, because he would have had no reason to believe that by pointing the gun at Helena Hutchins, he was creating a risk to her. And there are completely inert prop guns out there. They're not used very often in Hollywood. Well, they're not used for close scenes like this was intended to be, because if you get close enough, you can tell that they're fake. They're used for extras, in the background, so you don't have to. The extras have rubber guns, rubber ARs, that kind of thing. And from a distance, they look just fine most of the time when the barrel's not bent sideways. But for close-in scenes, they tend to use real guns because they look real. And of course, he always conceded that he knew it was a real gun, which is what creates a liability. Anytime you point a real gun at someone, you're creating a risk of death, unless you first ensured that the gun has no ammo in it. Even then, I would be nervous pointing a real gun at someone, but they can't actually fire with no bullets in the gun. And if you check to make sure that's the case, it's just really a hunk of steel in your hand at that point. But if you don't check and you kill someone, well, then you acted recklessly for your failure to check. You created an unnecessary, unjustified risk of death to another, and death resulted.